you've got gravity, right? And everything pulls on each other in space. And that's how the tide works with the moon. That's how we are round. So how does the tide work and all of these different things work with gravity if the Earth is flat?
I gotcha. Yeah, there is no gravity. It's not a force. And your ideas that mass attracts mass are incorrect. So when you observe how gas behaves, mass isn't attracting mass. Quite the contrary, in fact. When gas
I'm not talking
particles,
about gas.
That'll be the consistency of every single guest that's asked me a question to date, interrupting before the answers come to the conclusion. So your idea and your question about how gravity would work, because gravity is definitely real based on your question, I'm saying, gravity isn't real, and people who've gone through higher education understand that it's not a force. I'll give you a few quotes. Professor Brian Cox, quote, "There isn't really a force of gravity at all," end quote, Professor Brian Cox. Or maybe the editor of Scientific American, George Musa, quote, "Gravity is not a force." So your question, based around the idea, ignorance, let's just call it, that there is this force of gravity on a globe that I somehow need to be explaining on a flat Earth, is purely based in your ignorance of there being a force of gravity, which there isn't. So before I need to answer the rest of your question based on the premise that you postulated to me in the affirmative, that there is definitely a force of gravity that I'm assuming in your question, there isn't. That eradicates any need to answer anything else about how a non-force force that you may think of as a force of gravity would work on a flat Earth. Meanwhile, the fact there is no force of gravity means there is no force holding gas to a ball in a sky vacuum. You see, outer space is fake. There is no area of volume above your head to travel to the moon through or to travel to Mars through. That sky vacuum is the only real necessity to have this begging the question notion you put to me that there is a force of gravity. There isn't. But also space is fake. It's a second law of thermodynamics violation. Gas we're breathing would fill that space if space was real.
So how does the the sea, how does that move and have tides and stuff?
Did I make a claim about it? Did I make a claim about how tides work to prove a flat Earth?
It doesn't matter if you make a claim. You have to defend it, otherwise it's pointless.
I have to, do I? Prove unicorns aren't real. Go.
Have a whole
sorry, just make a little comparison for you.
You don't know anything about it.
Now you've asked your question, demanded that I answer a question. No. Prove unicorns aren't real. Go. I demand it, like you've just done.